AnneLister is a name that cannot be overlooked in the study of lesbian history. She is often defined by British historians as the first truly modern lesbian to come out. In an era where she lived her life on her own terms and did not hide her sexual orientation, she was undoubtedly a pioneer of feminism. AnneLister was born on April 3, 1791, into a small landowning family in Halifax, Yorkshire, England. Her parents had 4 sons and 2 daughters, but only Anne and her sister Marion survived to adulthood. In her early years, like many girls, she briefly attended boarding school twice. It is said that during her time at school, she had already become a tomboy who liked girls and began pursuing her female classmates. At the age of 22, Anne became the heir to the Lister family estate, Shibden Hall. This was primarily because there were no surviving male heirs in the family, and thus the fortune fell to Anne. She then moved to Shibden Hall with her sister Marion to live with their Uncle James and Aunt Anne. She set an ambitious plan for herself to read and study, and soon began managing and renovating the estate. In 1826, Anne inherited her uncle's share, and eventually, after her beloved aunt passed away in 1836, she became the sole owner of the estate. Anne managed approximately 400 acres of the family estate, with her income coming from agricultural rents, mining, and quarrying. She ran and expanded the family business like a true entrepreneur. In the early 19th century, the English countryside was undergoing extraordinary historical changes, as the British Industrial Revolution had reached its peak. Purely agricultural operations had become outdated and obsolete. Anne adapted to the times, shifting the estate's focus from agriculture to coal mining. She negotiated deals and signed contracts, hiring and firing male workers just like a male boss. In a male-dominated society, AnneLister became a shrewd businesswoman. Anne never hid her lesbian demeanor. She was always dressed in black gentleman's attire and was nicknamed GentlemanJack by some townsfolk. Some people often mocked her, ridiculing her masculine presence on the streets, and there were even shameless individuals who would try to lift her skirts in public to verify whether she was a man or a woman. But AnneLister was not intimidated by any of this. She was physically stronger than the average woman and would fend off street harassers with her umbrella. She lived her life on her own terms, doing business like a man, pursuing the women she loved. This behavior made respectable families in Halifax worry when she approached their daughters, fearing that Anne would lead them astray. Anne was a traveler and adventurer. From the age of 15, she was passionate about traveling and kept extensive diaries. In 1819, Anne visited Paris for the first time with her aunt. But she returned to Paris in 1824 and went on to travel extensively in France, Switzerland, the Low Countries, Germany, Scandinavia, and Russia. From 1828 to 1832, Anne was introduced to the English and Scottish aristocracy through her friend Sibylla Maclean, which allowed her to enter higher social circles for a period of time. In addition to visiting major landmarks, she often explored less frequented sites such as orphanages, factories, prisons, and mines. She stayed in various types of accommodations, ranging from grand hotels and private mansions to roadside inns, cottages, monasteries, mountain cabins, and even her own carriage. Anne was also an early mountaineering enthusiast. In 1830, she ascended Mont Perdu, the 3rd highest peak in the Pyrenees, and in 1838, she became the first amateur climber to reach the summit of Vignemale in the Pyrenees. As early as 1833, Anne had been dreaming of going to Russia. On June 20th, 1839, she finally left Halifax and embarked on her last adventure. Until her death in 1840, she had been planning to visit the Middle East and climb Mount Ararat. There is no doubt that Anne was a master in matters of the heart, with at least 4 noteworthy romantic relationships in her lifetime. In 1805, 14-year-old AnneLister was sent to the manor school in York an elite girls' boarding school with about 41 students. Eliza Rain was the daughter of William Rain, a surgeon with the East India Company. Anne and Eliza began a friendship at school that grew increasingly close, to the point where they wanted to spend their lives together. After Anne left the school, the two girls started corresponding by letter. In the summer of 1806, Eliza visited Halifax for the first time. A few weeks later, Eliza's departure had a profound impact on Anne, as it became the catalyst for Anne to begin writing her first diary. Through her relationship with Eliza, Anne was introduced to social events in York's upper class. As her social circle expanded, Eliza quickly began to realize that she was losing Anne. In 1810, Anne met Isabella Norcliffe. Eliza suffered from mental decline and was cared for by Dr. Belcom in York, starting in 1814. Anne visited her there several times. Eliza passed away in Yorkshire on December 31, 1860, at the age of 69. Isabella Norcliffe was born in 1785 as the eldest daughter of the wealthy landowner Thomas Norcliffe of Dalton. In 1810, Anne began pursuing Isabella, captivated by the wealthy and complex lifestyle of Isabella's family. As a newcomer to York's upper society, Anne was ambitious and eager to learn the ways of the world. During this time, she became infatuated with Isabella. Isabella was 6 years older than Eliza Rain and more worldly. Throughout Anne's life, she and Isabella remained friends, though they were occasionally lovers. Anne's refusal to accept Isabella as her life partner was a heavy blow to Isabella, who remained single for the rest of her life. She passed away in 1846 at the age of 61. Mariana Lawton was the daughter of a doctor. She and Anne first met in 1812 at a family gathering at the Norcliffe family's Langton Hall. Anne was immediately and deeply attracted to Mariana, and the two women vowed to spend their lives together. However, on March 9, 1816, Mariana married Charles Lawton, a wealthy landowner much older than her, and became the mistress of Lawton Hall. Although Anne and Mariana maintained a secret relationship for many years, their hope of ultimately being together was never realized. Mariana outlived Anne and passed away at her sister's home in London at the age of 78. Anne Walker was the younger daughter of John Walker, a wool manufacturer who owned property near Shibden Hall. When both of her parents passed away in 1823, the then 19-year-old Anne inherited a significant fortune. In 1830, following the untimely death of her brother John, she became an even wealthier heiress. In 1832, AnneLister returned to Halifax, hoping to settle down. She fell in love with the young and wealthy Anne Walker and began proposing to her. The two women could not have a legal marriage, but Anne and Anne planned to hold a secret church wedding, a shockingly bold decision at the time. In 1834, they held their wedding at the Holy Trinity Church in Goodramgate. To this day, the church has a rainbow plaque commemorating the first brave lesbian couple to marry in British history. In September 1834, Anne and Anne settled together at Shibden Hall, where they spent 6 years of married life. In 1840, AnneLister and Anne Walker embarked on a journey to Russia. However, during the trip, AnneLister fell ill and died in Georgia. Anne had her lover's body embalmed and, after a 6-month journey, returned to Anne's hometown of Halifax, where she buried Anne in the church where the Lister family was laid to rest. After Anne's death, Anne continued to live at Shibden Hall until her mental illness made it impossible for her to manage the estate. In 1843, she was placed in a private asylum in York, run by Dr. Stephen Belcom, the brother of Mariana Lawton. Later, she was transferred back to Shibden Hall. Eventually, she returned to her family home in Lightcliffe, where she passed away at the age of 51. Whether Anne Walker truly suffered from a mental illness or was forcibly labeled as such by her relatives remains a matter of debate. Personally, I lean towards the latter, as Anne never exhibited any signs of mental illness throughout her life. Even after her lover's death, she was strong enough to handle the funeral arrangements. Unfortunately, in that era, women often found themselves isolated and powerless under the pressure of male relatives, with no legal protections for their independence or freedom. AnneLister is celebrated as a lesbian ahead of her time. In her diary, she boldly wrote, "I love and only love the fairer sex, and thus beloved by them in turn. My heart revolts from any love but theirs." Throughout her life, AnneLister wrote over 5 million words in her diaries, documenting her travels, her life, her loves, and her adventures. For privacy reasons, she recorded some of the more explicit content using a coded system of symbols. These diaries were kept in the family estate and remained undiscovered until they were found and deciphered by descendants in 1890. However, at that time, British society still harbored hostility towards homosexuality, as demonstrated by the public's reaction to the 1895 trial of Oscar Wilde. As a result, the diaries were carefully sealed away and not made public. It wasn't until the 1950s that the diaries were rediscovered and gradually deciphered, revealing AnneLister's life to the world. This caused a sensation in the historical community, as it was astonishing to discover that over 200 years ago, a woman had lived her life in such an unprecedented way.